From a little cover, I got my dreams inside. Wrestling on the mat, I go and put up a fight. With every hold and slam, I rise to the peak. Now as Professor Bear, it's my strength that they see. Roaring with knowledge like a lion so proud. In this wrestling world, I'm standing out loud. I'm Professor Bear, got the passion to spare. Wrestling's my life, with the power to share. From the roof to ropes, in the spotlight we gleam. Chasing victory dreams, living out the theme. Now my WOSN, my squad.
Yeah. Hey, new beginnings on the cusp. Not too old to adjust. Old dog, new tricks. Remember, I was just a pup. Something dirty in my cup. Clean soul.
With my boys crew, we'll always ride. In the wrestling world, one just claim the prize.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I am Professor Bear, and this is a Bear's Thoughts. And today, boys and girls, men and women, we are going to continue with our our promotional appreciation month. And we are talking to a gentleman that is from the UK. Yes, we are talking with Worldwide Wrestling League, Mike. Mike, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Professor Bear. I'm good. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Oh, no, thank you for coming on. So, before we get started, I would like to point out where our logo was. It's their logo. So if you want to go and look them up, you will see their logo. And the reason we do this because unfortunately the wrestling world is a small entity, and a lot of times there are similar names, or in some cases the exact same names, and you get confused on who's who. So we want to help make that a little bit clearer for you. Plus, if you're like me, you like stuff easy, I put up that QR code that would take you directly to their YouTube page so you can see some of their content and get familiar with their wrestling. Now, with that being said, Mike, the question I always ask my guests first is, how did you become a wrestling fan?
Well, I became a wrestling fan. The earliest memories of wrestling are when I was 8 years old. In the UK, we had our own wrestling scene, or the traditional British wrestling. That was before my time. It was taken off television, and I believe it was maybe 1989. So I was born in 85. So the British wrestling as we knew it was not long for the world when I arrived. But when Sky Television started broadcasting WWE, the American style of wrestling became popular over here, and that's what I started watching. It was on I believe a Friday night at the time. We'd just got Sky Television installed in our home. I was 8 years old. Sky TV was you guys, most of your you have like your network television, yeah,
Right.
and then you can get cable, and it provides loads of extra channels on top of it. Well, instead of we have cable too over here, but what was more popular at the certainly at the time was satellite based TV. But it was the same. It was the same idea, and we went from having 4 or 5 channels on our terrestrial TV, which would be your network TV, to having sort of 200 channels on satellite television. So it was a big jump. And one of the things was it carried Sky Sports, which had WWE. I think it was Todd Pettengill and would host WWF Mania at the time, and that's what I started watching. So my earliest memories are. People say that era of WWF was maybe a sort of a less popular era, kind of between the golden age and what became the Attitude Era.
Yes.
But I loved it. I remember getting all excited for my first pay-per-view, which would have been the 1994 Royal Rumble, and it was The Undertaker versus Yokozuna. And I remember seeing Paul Bearer building this big casket for Yokozuna because, he was so big he wouldn't fit in a normal casket. So he was in his workshop every week on Mania with his hammer and his nails building this big casket for Yokozuna. So that was what drew me in, this crazy world of professional wrestling back in 1994. And people have said to me before, well, if you liked wrestling then, it was at its worst. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there was some great wrestling in the early 90s. If you think about all the guys that were around then that I got to watch and as a kid, Taker and Yoko, as I just mentioned, but also you had Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash back when they were Razor and Diesel. So that was the era that I was first introduced to. And all these years later, I'm 25 years in the wrestling business now. So who'd have thought it back watching Rumble in 1994? But all these years later, it's been a huge part of my life.
So how did you go from just being a fan to getting into the business?
So message boards were a thing in the early days of the internet. And I managed to make contact on one of these message boards with a wrestler by the name of Drew McDonald. He was, he was part of that old British scene, and he also was one of the wrestlers that made it over to the States as well. I think he spent, certainly in Canada, he spent a lot of time over with Stampede Wrestling in Calgary, and by this point he was back in the UK touring with some of the promotions that were still going around over here. And I pestered him enough that he said, where are you? And I told him where I was, and he said, turn up to Edinburgh and it was a date in February at a theatre in Edinburgh that this wrestling show was taking place. And he said, and I'll show you a few things in the ring. Well, I turned up and he wasn't actually there. So I think that was my first time I'd fallen victim to the old wrestler's rib. But luckily, the promoter of that event, and very famous promoter that if you've heard any stories about British wrestling, you've probably heard about Brian Dixon. And he said to me, and I'm 15 years old, and he said, if you help us set up and help us during the show, help me sell some foam hands, we'll show you a few things in the ring. So even though the guy that invited me, who I became friends with later on and helped me a lot in my wrestling career, but he invited me but wasn't ever supposed to be at this show. Do you know, I never Drew, bless him, isn't around anymore. He passed maybe about 10 years ago now, and I don't think I ever told him this story. I wish I had. It was many car rides together over the years, but I don't think I ever reminded him of this. my first day in the wrestling business. Sure enough, yeah, they showed me a few moves, and they said, "Well, come back next time." Well, next time we're in Scotland. We're doing 8 days or however, it was a tour, and they invited me back, and that was my way in. They trained me before the events, and eventually I got put in a tag team match. I got put in some of the every show back then would end with a Royal Rumble, so I had plenty of Royal Rumbles back in those days, and that was my entry into the wrestling business. And from there, they would bring over some of the bigger names from America that had been on television. Some of the early ones, I remember the Barbarian was on that first show that I was at, and I think Tatanka was at one. And in 2002, 2003, 2002, they brought in Jake the Snake Roberts, who had relocated to the UK, and Jake, me and my friend that was going on this journey with me in training to be a wrestler, Jake invited us down to train with him. He was setting up his own training school down in a little place called St Albans near London, and we started going down there once or twice a month for the next few years. And I got to learn from probably one of the greatest minds in the history of professional wrestling, Jake Roberts. So a very sort of blended introduction to wrestling. I had the old British guys, and then I also had had one of the biggest stars in American wrestling history, Jake the Snake. So I had two very different kind of learning trees to sit underneath.
Which is very interesting because, like you said, Jake the Snake is one of the best wrestling minds out there. That even though people love Jake, I still don't think he gets the credit that he truly deserves of being such a strategist when it comes to the business. And
100%. I mean, for him to be, I don't know if he still is now. I think he is. I think he's still under a contract with AEW, and for him to be working somewhere like that and not be heavily involved in the creative side, I think it should be a crime against professional wrestling. But there we go.
Yeah, unfortunately. So you have to be the most unique person I've heard of getting into wrestling. You got into wrestling by a rib, and 23 years later, you are still doing what you love. That's amazing.
Yeah, I feel every bit of those 25 years. It's 25 years this May. And I've got my new T-shirt out as well. 25 years of knee lifts. That's what it says. 25 years of blood, sweat, and knee lifts. And you can get that T-shirt from w3lwrestling.com. You did say I could plug things.
Yes, of course. I love it.
It's a nice bright yellow shirt. You'll not get run over in the street wearing it.
So, how did you get into Worldwide Wrestling League?
Okay, so before I actually went to the origin story of W3L, which is Worldwide Wrestling League, is I was going to spend a year doing some more training in Canada. And before I left, I really wanted to run. I don't know why, because I was like 17, and I would not encourage any 17-year-old to try and run their own wrestling event. But it was a different world back then. There was hardly any local wrestling where I was. And for some reason, I just got this idea in my head: I'm going to run an event in my hometown just before I go away for this year. I want to do this. So I needed a name for the promotion, I don't think I would have imagined that it would then become, one of the longest running sort of modern promotions in the UK. We celebrated 20 years just a couple of years back. When I returned from that time in Canada, there was still no regular wrestling. There was regular wrestling in the west of Scotland, but nothing in the east. So I picked that name straight back up. And in 2005, we launched W3L again, and it got one step at a time. It got bigger, and the events got into more sort of prestigious venues, and we just kept growing. And now here we are, all these years later.
So with that, with you doing an event before you left at 17, which is, like you said, a crazy thought that you wanted to do. What was some of the first things that you learned once you got back, that you needed to continuously do your own promotion?
Sorry, things that I needed to work on, or
what you needed to do to keep you to build up your promotion?
Sure. So I think one of the reasons why I wanted to run that very first show is I'd always been quite sort of business minded. Like I'd studied business at school. That was the sort of the area that I got my best grades and stuff like that. And that was I did as part of going to Canada. In order to get the visa, I had to apply for university. I had no intention of going to university. I wanted to be a wrestler. If I was giving somebody advice today, I'd say do both. But I applied to university so that I could get the university place and leverage that to get the visa to then go and do this training in Canada. And that was all sort of business that I'd got in with. So I have always been quite business minded. But what I wanted to do when I got back and I started trying to seriously think about running wrestling shows on a more regular basis is I surrounded myself by people that were far more experienced, because I had that self-awareness then that, okay, I was like 19 then, still a very young boy to be running wrestling events. So I looked out some of the most experienced British wrestlers on the circuit to come up and so that I could learn from them. Yes, they were working for me, but I was also trying to learn from them how things should be and get some really invaluable advice as to how to survive in wrestling and make these like as a wrestler, but also as a promoter to make these events successful. And that's for the longest time those two ran in parallel. There was Mike the businessman and Mike the wrestler, and in both of those both of those journeys, I always looked to surround myself with people that had been that had some success and that had all that experience. The only way you can learn is from working with people that are better than you. That's how you get better.
Right. One thing I find amazing that you were able to do both. I know of people who are a lot older than you that tried to manage both their career and a promotion, and they failed. And I think it was so much of the pressure of everything falling on them. How did you avoid it? How did you avoid that? And again, at such a young age, knowing, hey, this is going to be my company and I'm going to book this, plus do it wrestle myself.
It's not a road I would advise anybody traveling on along now. But again, it was different then. There really was not a lot of wrestling. So in many ways, it was to help myself as a wrestler. I needed more experience. There really was not that many opportunities to work on wrestling events and to get matches and get bookings. Now it seems like there's a wrestling. I don't know how it is. Whereabouts in the States are you?
In Knoxville, Tennessee.
So Tennessee's got a rich wrestling history. Was I might be having a brain fart there, but was here. But was Tracy Smothers? He was from Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
He was.
Yeah.
Tracy Smothers has been over for W3L. I learned a lot from Tracy. Tracy was a really, really good guy.
He was really good. We lost somebody big when he passed away, because he was such an amazing, not only wrestler, but just person in general.
He was fantastic. I've got some great memories of Tracy. You're being a bear. You're lucky he didn't try and like headlock you when he saw you or anything like that.
It's funny that we're talking about Tracy, because recently I was going through my garage and pulling some stuff out, and I found an autograph that Tracy gave me, and I was blown away that I still had it, and it's in great condition. And I remember the day I met him, and like I said, he was so nice. And a matter of fact, I think when I seen him, he was playing a heel, but he was just such a nice guy. But when he played that heel, oh my goodness, you wanted to punch Tracy in the face. He was that convincing and good.
He was good. He was great. If you go to our YouTube channel or just type in W3L Tracy Smothers, you'll find we did a tribute. We got the footage from when his matches in W3L, and there's a little tribute edition for Tracy on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But yeah, fantastic guy. But to circle back, I don't know how busy, how many wrestling events there are in Tennessee. Wrestling's really popular, so I imagine quite a lot. Here, there seems to be a wrestling show on every street corner now. It's ridiculous. There's far too many events because there isn't. A lot of them aren't well attended, and perhaps if there was less, then they might be doing better. But back then, it wasn't like that. Certainly in Scotland, there just wasn't that many wrestling events, and you cannot say that now. If you're getting in the business now and think that the way forward is to run events, you're part of the problem. You're diluting what's already a bursting at the seams wrestling scene. There's plenty of opportunities now, but back then there wasn't. So that was the situation I was faced with. And as we got a little bit further on the road, I would say it did hurt me. I mean, I had tryouts for WWE. I got to that stage, which only so many people do. But perhaps if I'd have got to that stage sooner by not being so engulfed in the business side of it, maybe if I was 5 years ahead of myself, things might have worked out differently in that avenue. But There definitely came a point where, my own personal wrestling career was probably set back a bit by how focused I had to become as things got bigger with W3L on the business side. Now that I turned 40 last year, so now I don't have to worry about that as much because I don't think they're interested in anyone over 35. And my body's starting to fall apart. So now I am much more focused on the business side. It's I'm still active. I'm still getting in the ring, but Particularly at W3L events, I'm mostly at the production desk now because that's where I'm best used. But those two paths, the business side of wrestling and the wrestler side of wrestling, can create a lot of conflicts of interest, and it certainly can distract you if your focus is if your dream is to make the most out of your wrestling career, then focus on that. But the way things have panned out, I'm very proud of W3L. I'm proud of what I've done as a wrestler, and I'm proud of the events we've got now. And we've experienced a lot of growth just really since the pandemic. And things are looking more promising than ever for us at the moment in terms of the kind of traction that we're getting, the reaction to our live events. So, everything happens for a reason, and the path I've traveled has led us to where we're at now.
Right. And if you wouldn't have went down that road, who's to say that you would have promotion now? And like you said, you did it for 20 plus years. That's amazing, and especially in the wrestling business, where honestly I think if you make it 5 years, that's a major accomplishment, considering that, like you said, wrestling is so diluted with promotions everywhere. So that does say a lot for your success as being the owner of a company, that you're 20 plus years in it and growing. Let's talk about the titles that you have in your promotion. How many titles do y'all have?
So we have got the W3L Championship, which was established back in 2003. And the first champion was the European hardcore icon Iceman. Other notable names, Tracy Smothers. He didn't win the W3L Championship, but he challenged for it. A former W3L champion would be a man you might know, Rowdy Ricky Knight. He is the father of Saraya Paige in WWE.
Right.
So the W3L Championship has quite a rich history. It is one of the older titles now in the UK, and we're actually revealing a brand new W3L Championship. The belt has been redesigned for the first time since 2007. So after 19 years, we're retiring the 1912. 19 years. I had to do the maths there in my head. After 19 years, we're retiring the design that's been around all those years, and we're unveiling a new W3L Championship at Europe's biggest and best wrestling convention for the love of wrestling, which takes place in Manchester this weekend. Myself, I'll be there, and Chris Renfrew will be there as well. A W3L stand at this convention, and we're very excited to reveal the new championship belt on such a big stage. Loads of big stars will be there. It's going to be a really fun weekend in Manchester. So the W3L Championship is a very, very topical title to discuss just now. We also have our Women's Championship, which I think is the second oldest Women's Championship, certainly in the UK, possibly in Europe. It was established in 2007, and to my knowledge, and I'd be interested if I happily stand corrected, but to my knowledge, the only older title in the UK would be the WAW Women's Championship, and then ours. We've had some great women hold that championship over the years. Nikki Storm, Nikki Cross in WWE.
Yes.
Is a former W3L Women's Champion. Viper is a former W3L Women's Champion. I'm trying to think what Viper wrestles as.
Uh,
She's one of the bodyguards for
yeah,
yeah.
Piper Nivens.
Yes. But you see, when you've known these guys, when like I'm terrible for keeping in contact with people. I've not spoken to them in years, but when I knew them for so mthat years as this other name, so it's hard
Exactly.
to all of a
Yeah.
sudden refer to them as something else. So that's our women's championship. We have tag team championships. They're currently on a bit of a sabbatical. We've got so many good things going on in W3L just now. We find that creatively our tag team titles, there can only be one tag team match on a card. When you're running the cards that we run, there's obviously business reasons for it, but we only have 5 or 6 matches per event. And to have a proper tag division, we would need more events or more matches per event. So instead of throwing random tag teams together and potentially diluting what I think is a really exciting wrestling promotion to follow at the moment, we've just let them rest for a while. I'm sure they'll come back one day, but they're on sabbatical, the tag titles. We do have another singles championship, which is our Wrestling Showdown Championship, somewhat like the old TV title idea.
Right.
I just sound like all I do is brag about being the longest and the oldest, but our weekly YouTube show, W3L Wrestling Showdown, I think, and again, happily stand corrected, but I think it is the longest running weekly wrestling broadcast on YouTube. If anybody can clue me in on a weekly wrestling show that airs on YouTube, that's aired earlier than 2014, I'll happily change that to billing it as the second longest, but I think it's the longest. And that title represents our weekly YouTube show. And then we have our Breakout Championship, which initially it was tied to, we don't have a training facility at the moment, but we did when we first introduced that title. So it maybe initially we did have like rookie wrestlers in mind, but the Breakout Championship, the rule for the Breakout title is you can only challenge for the Breakout Championship if you've not held any other championship in W3L. So we currently have fellow 20-year veteran of Scottish wrestling, Chris Renfrew, as our breakout champion, purely because whilst he's been around for 20 years, it took him 19 years to finally cross paths and collide with W3L. He'd been everywhere else, and we're really excited to have him. He's a dangerous, unpredictable gentleman, but he certainly makes for an exciting addition to our roster. So it's he's funny that he's now our breakout champion after so many years in the business.
I like the premise of that. I love that it puts an emphasis on people who haven't won championships. It gives them opportunity to come into their own and learn how to be a champion. Because some titles I've seen, I always think to myself, okay, this title is to help build someone, to give them that rub to help them get over, learn their character, and how to be a great champion.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have goals to work for. Going back to what we were talking about growing up watching wrestling, I knew that if somebody was Intercontinental champion, then their next goal would be the WWE Championship. So, to me, that kind of makes sense to have that setup. You could argue that perhaps having 3 singles championships, 3 singles male championships, is potentially too many titles. And I would find it difficult to defend that, because I tend to agree. But each title is offering something different at the moment. The same way that we retired or put the tag team titles on sabbatical for a while. Perhaps that will happen in time to one of the singles titles. But somebody would have to actually beat Chris Renfrew for that championship first in order for us to think about doing anything with that title, because I don't think he's letting go of it.
Well, and I think I love the premise. I don't think 3 is too many. And I was carrying this conversation with a buddy of mine, and we were talking about what's too many titles, what's not enough titles. And my philosophy is, if you have the roster size to carry 3 titles, then you should, because not only does it give people different goals to go after, but it helps make it logical why a certain person is not stepped up to maybe the heavyweight title. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe they want to build their craft a little more before they challenge for that. So for me, I'm always about, yes, if you have titles, it's okay. Just make it sensible and make it where it doesn't put a noose around your talent.
As long as they're defined, as long as they're clearly defined and offer something different, which in our case, I do think that they are defined and offer something different. When I say there's too many, it's because I've also said during this interview that we only have 5 or 6 matches per card.
Right.
And just to expand on that a little bit, our events last 2 hours, and the majority, we have some great fans of all ages, but we have, I would say, at least 50% of the audience is younger kids, and attention spans. And I've been at events where you see, if they go longer than 2 hours, people start leaving. We would rather people left wanting more, not to feel shortchanged, but we certainly don't want to outstay our welcome. So I mean, that's why we have 5 or 6 matches. But not all the titles need to be defended at every event,
Exactly.
And they all offer something. They all offer something different. So I can understand both sides of the argument.
Right. I love the fact that you are in tune with your audience, that okay, 2 hours is perfect. It gives enough time we're going to do 5 to 6 matches. It gives the wrestlers enough time to create their magic and have people invest without feeling like overkill, where they're to the point after the 3rd, 4th hour, people are leaving because they became disinterested.
Even if it's a good thing, too much of a good thing, it can still be bad. And do you know what else we find it doesn't eat in a bad way when I say it eats into our event time, because it's something that we have a lot of positive feedback on. But our production has got to the point where effectively it is like a television taping, in that they're seeing things on the screen. When we look at how much time each match is gonna probably get, before all this production was added, that was just wrestler entrance match. Now it's it takes us a few minutes to start the event because the crowd quite likes to see the introduction to Showdown play on the screen. And then when the lights come up, they know our cameras are on and they'll wave at the cameras, and that's all great, and it's stuff that people enjoy. But it does, again, it adds time to the event. So it's funny, like the evolution of how our shows are produced. We now have to, this good thing, which is the production, we also have to be conscious of the time that's adding to the length of our event, just through logistical things like how long is the building booked for,
Right.
If you want to do three pre-match interviews, 2 adverts, and a show open and maybe a video package to tell people about the main event, there's 15 minutes right there,
Right.
just on the screen.
I love the fact that you put in mind the entertainment side of the business, especially with WWE cutting back its house shows. It gives a great opportunity for your company to come up and gain more fans that are lost because they can't get that house show with the WWE. I think,
unfortunately, a lot of people can't even afford to attend them when they do tour now. It used to be, like you'd get a cheap ticket for £30, which is, I don't know, about $45 maybe. Now I'm hearing that the cheapest tickets are like £200-300, which if you've got 2 kids that love wrestling, they can't go on their own. At least one parent's going to have to go with them. You're talking almost £600-700, like $1,000 just to take your kids to see WWE. It's really sad that a lot of kids will lose out on that experience just because of how expensive it's become, because kids still love wrestling. I'm not saying it's for kids, because I know that, there's a huge adult fan base as well, but
right.
But I remember the magic of being at wrestling events as a kid, and to think that some other kids these days won't get that experience because of the cost of tickets, and this isn't inflation. This is like the value of it's just gone through the roof. Whatever the market will bear, I think is the term that's used for some of the pricing. But that's a good thing for independent promotions, because you can say it's affordable to come to our event.
And what I love about it is not only that it's affordable, you get a different experience going to an independent wrestling show. You could actually talk to the wrestler, where in WWE, you're 9 times out of 10 won't get to talk to that wrestler. You won't get to say how much you're a fan of that wrestler. You get an experience that is such, for me, for what I see, is an experience that's going to last a lifetime, that's going to drive those kids even when they become teenagers and young adults. They're going to remember that, and hey, this is cool on TV, but these guys I can talk to, I can touch, I can get an autograph. So I think it's a great time for indie wrestling all over the world. I had an event I went to at a local show, and me and one of the wrestlers, he was on my podcast. Me and him was talking, and I told him a fan of mine was there, and he asked me when I was going to come out with merchandise. And I told him it was funny. He asked, I had some, I'm working on it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bring a shirt to just give away. Well, he said, well, if I'm gonna give a shirt away, he's gonna give a shirt away. Okay. The next 2 days later, he was on another different podcast, and I just so happened I'm on YouTube and I see it, and so I jumped on and I told him, yeah, I'm gonna give a shirt away, and the guy's like, yo, you ain't gonna mention I'm gonna give a shirt away? Well, the two hosts or the commentating team, and they said, well, if y'all giving shirts away, we're gonna give a shirt away.
Well, I'm losing count of these shirts just now.
It gets worse. So I'm thinking to myself, when I was a kid and went to wrestling, and I wanted something, but my parents couldn't afford it because they spent the money on food and everything else. So I thought to myself, man, I would feel bad to give one person something and all the other kids, it may not even be a kid that gets the shirt. I would feel bad. And I decided, you know what? I had a bunch of backpacks that I was working on. I took all my backpacks and to make sure every kid in that place got something. I walk through the door, the announcer sees me, and I go over and he said, I started something. And the first thing I thought is, how? I just walked in the door. Then he tells me that the other wrestlers heard that we were giving away shirts. And so they're giving away shirts and other things that I wasn't going to top them. So I was like, okay, then you tell them this. I'm giving every kid a backpack. Tell them to top that. So in intermission, we gave out all this stuff. Every kid, even some adults got shirts, backpacks, everything. My point was
good for you guys.
Yeah, and my point was I understand how it feels you can't get something. I wanted to make sure every kid left with a smile on their face. Now, I didn't do it for attention or really didn't even want them to know I did it. But the announcers made me stand up when they gave the stuff away and gave me credit for it, which again, I didn't want it. I just wanted everybody to be happy.
It's a community spirit as well that exists within the wrestling community.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I do love, that I'm blessed to say I'm a small part of the community, because I can help other people. I can help connect wrestlers to promotions, or tell someone about somebody they may not have seen. I love being able to feel like I'm contributing to the sport I love. And there's an old term that I believe in wholeheartedly is, make sure you leave the business better than you found it.
You know, that's one of my my favorite terms in wrestling. And you know, the story that you told then about, you know, thinking about others and thinking about other people's experience in wrestling, I wish more people had that outlook, because a lot of people in wrestling, there's some great people in wrestling, don't get me wrong, but right. I encounter a lot of people that just think about what I can get, what can I get out of wrestling, how can I fulfill my wrestling dream, and in doing so, they can, you know, sometimes make the business worse because they're taking shortcuts and they're only thinking about themselves. And those two things, you know, thinking about everybody else in wrestling and wrestling as a whole, is how you ultimately make the business better. If you spend your entire time in wrestling just trying to take from it, you come out the other end, you've not changed a thing. But if you try and instill the values that you were just speaking about, like, you know, like giving away the backpacks to the kids, you're going to leave the business in a way that those values will hopefully be adopted by others that you've come into contact with. But I love the expression "leave the business better than you found it," and it's something that I put probably more thought into. I've always believed in it, but certainly something that I think about more these days than I used to. As age catches up to me, I'm sure I've got another good run left in me, but
Right.
I'm no spring chicken anymore. So those kind of thinking about like legacy and not in a vain sort of way, but in a way of trying to make a positive impact. Is certainly something I'm much more conscious of.
I think I'm speaking as a 52-year-old man that here recently in the last few years, I've gotten into wrestling more than I thought I could have. I realized that being a wrestler is not the only way to get into the business. And finding out that I have so many different ways to contribute to wrestling, I take that very seriously, and I love what I'm doing. I told somebody the day it stopped being fun is the day I stopped doing what I'm doing, but I don't see it anytime soon. And just to have so much respect in the business where I can go and have a conversation with a wrestler and they know me from hearing, listening to my podcast or people talking about me and my mannerisms, how I'm so polite and very humble, and it makes a big difference that I never thought I could do, and now that I can and do, I take it again seriously, and I just feel like if I'm not giving back, something's wrong.
Well, look at what you're doing today. You've invited me on to discuss, a wrestling promotion that's across the Atlantic. That's helping publicize other wrestling promotions. That aren't even in your vicinity.
Yeah.
Having a podcast and talking about your local promotions is a huge help to your local wrestling scene. There's some guys that do podcasts around our neck of the woods, pun unintended, with you being a bear and all. And I say the same thing to them, that they do a massive, service to wrestling by taking their time and using it to help spread the word and talk about local wrestling events. There's loads of people that talk about WWE. And I'm sure you likely have some shows where you talk about the wrestling that's on TV, the big promotions.
Right.
But to take the time to discuss the independent scene as well, you're doing a huge service to independent wrestling there. So thank you for for having your show and inviting people like me on.
And again, it's no problem. One of the things that I've taken away from doing this is how, and it's amazing how you look at things and think. The general idea was to promote US based companies. Then I made a mistake. It was a mistake I made that helped me get where I am now. I made a mistake and sent a request to a company in Finland. And once I realized it was true, I had sent the message. And I thought, well, I'm not going to worry about it. They're not going to reply anyway. They wouldn't do it. About 15 minutes later, they replied and said they would love to do it. So then it got me thinking. I'm like, okay, well, let me try this other one in Australia. And lo and behold, they wanted to do it. So then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to shoot my shot with everybody I can find around the world. Let me see, because as much, and this is one thing I think the U.S. fan base, and that's including me, we have a tendency to overlook other promotions outside of the U.S. because and no disrespect, but we feel like we're the best. We have everything. And lo and behold, doing these podcasts, I have learned and became more humble that there are so many great promotions out there that we never heard of or never had a chance to look into. There, we have all the internet, we have streaming services. You can go to YouTube right now and watch anything around the world, and this is a blessing. So why not take advantage of it? Why not get to see a promotion you may not have ever thought of, and different wrestling styles that you didn't know existed? So the big thing for me is to spread positivity and information for everybody to grow from it. And that's why this month has been so amazing for me, to just talk to different people, learn their psychology, see how the U.S. played a part in your growth in the business and what you're doing now to keep your like your market alive and everything. Like I would say, like Nick Aldis, I became a super fan of his once he came into the NWA, and it wasn't just for his wrestling, it was his how he promoted, how he went to different countries, defended the title, and it made a big mark to me to learn more. To I'm a big history buff, and I can tell you stories about the AWA that ran up until 91. I can tell you their champions and stuff. So there's no limit on learning. So I just want to help people learn and enjoy this crazy world of wrestling.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying speaking to all the different promotions. It's both a big wrestling world, and when you start to make all these connections, you realize it's a small wrestling world out there as well. You know, you just look at you say that sometimes American wrestling fans can think that American wrestling is the be all and end all, but just look at the influences that are within the main promotions in America, and have always been there. The amount of people, and not just like close to home, your neighbors up north, Canada. Look at the amount of Canadian influence that there's been over the years. The whole Japanese style. Anytime you hear the term strong style, that's a nod to that sort of style over in Japan. And the amount of guys that went over there to learn, you know, and then went back to the States and had that influence on their work. Look at the lucha libre influence in America, you know, from south of the border down in Mexico. And in terms of European wrestling, you read like autobiographies or listen to people talk on podcasts about their you know, how they got into the business and their journey. The amount of, you know, big stars that really learned their craft touring Europe is something. You look at the current crop of European wrestlers that are in WWE and AEW now. Look at the WWE Performance Center training staff. They've got at least 3 guys over there that I know of, 3 coaches from Britain, 3 British coaches. So all these cultures and styles within wrestling are interlinked, and you know, the top companies certainly in America value these other countries and their what they can bring to the table. And what we have now is a big melting pot of all these different wrestling styles.
Definitely. And it's amazing, and we continue to get stronger and more out there, and I hope that we continue this run of everything. And right off the bat, I want to thank you for everything you have done to keep wrestling moving forward. I'm a big firm believer in giving people their flowers, because sometimes people never hear how we are appreciated. We appreciate their influence until after they're gone. And I'm a big believer of doing that where people can hear it and appreciate it. I appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate everything you've done. Um, I hope that W3L continues to build and grow to the status that you want. And thank you for just advancing wrestling to where it is today and where it's going to go in the future.
We're just going to keep moving forward, try and keep on the right path, and keep doing what's best for the rest, not just for W3L, but for the wrestling business, because our business beneath, the big corporate companies like WWE and AEW, our business at an independent level could be doing much better than it's doing now. And if we all pull in the right direction, it would benefit everybody.
Yes, definitely. Well,
thank you for having me on.
Oh, no problem.
I'm not running away. If you had another question, I can answer.
Actually, I was going to say, do you want to give any shout outs or anything before we go?
Oh, so, as I said, my new t-shirt, 25 years, blood, sweat, and knee lifts. You can grab that from w3lwrestling.com. We post internationally as well. But mainly just please support W3L. We're really excited about where everything's going just now. Subscribe on YouTube. We're the W3L network on YouTube. W3L Wrestling Showdown drops every Thursday at 7 o'clock. W3lwrestling.com for all our tour dates. But yeah, follow for you guys over in the States, please check us out on YouTube. And of course, we're also our big events are, for lack of a better term, our pay-per-view events. They're on Hooked on Wrestling TV. You can get that on the Apple iStore or on Android devices as well. hookedonwrestling.tv is where you can get all the information on that. W3L, alongside promotions such as Progress Wrestling from here in the UK. We've got some American promotions on there as well. Defy Wrestling, if you're familiar with them, they're on the Hooked on Wrestling TV platform, along with a host of other promotions. Really, it's a worldwide thing, Hooked on Wrestling, and it's a platform that we're very excited to be on. So please do check it out. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the usual. W3L Wrestling. You can find us.
And once again, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you, and hopefully you have an open invitation anytime you want to come on. Let me know, and we'll make it work.
Fantastic. I'd love to come back one day. We could maybe do a deep dive into something. We could talk about one aspect of wrestling and open it up.
Yes, that sounds great. So again, thank you so much. Guys, girls, thank you for joining me around the campfire once again with another amazing interview. Again, we have the tendency of thinking that wrestling is just a niche that's in our area, but it is so worldwide, And there are so many great promotions out there that I challenge you. I challenge you to go to Google and just put in wrestling promotions overseas to see what it brings up for you. There are so many great promotions. Go to YouTube. I tell you, of course, check with us at WSN. We're coming back with our YouTube, not YouTube, but our app. And who knows who we will team up with where you can watch it there. You just never know. So, as I always say before I leave my podcast, please, please, please go support your local indie wrestling. I can't I can't say it enough. I can't mean it enough. You will be surprised on how many great athletes that you can find at a lot of indie shows. Plus, it is affordable. You can take your family to a show and still come out with money. So please give the indie promotions a chance. With that being said, I am Professor Bear. This has been a Bear's Thought, and we will see you again around the campfire. Y'all take care.